again, Sunday School Leader. We are in a brand new month, a brand new quarter, a brand new unit. So let's look ahead and see what we've got coming up this week. Like I said, we're in a new unit and it is entitled The Dark Side. We're looking at Satan this week as week 1, and we're in Revelation chapter 12, verses 7 through 12. The point of the lesson is that Satan fights against us, but we can stand in Christ. I really believe this series might spark some interest in Sunday school, and you might see a little spike in attendance in the next few weeks just because of the subject matter. Now, if you would, send out those emails or postcards or whatever, however you communicate with your class, especially to those who haven't been in a while, and I bet you'll see a spike just based on the subject matter of the dark side and Satan and demons, and that's a subject that people are interested in. Now, usually when we approach this subject, we will err on one of two sides, one of two extremes. And one is that we will find a demon around every corner. We'll blame everything from paper cuts to cancer to Hurricane Harvey and the subsequent flooding. We'll blame all that on the devil. Anything bad that happens, it's the devil, it's the devil. And we can do that. We can be obsessed by it. The other side, the exact opposite, is another way that we can err when we come to thinking about the dark side. And that is, we could just dismiss it altogether and say that evil exists, but there's really not a personification of evil, and that the idea of Satan may be real, but there is not really a person, an angelic being called Satan. And so those are two extremes that we need to avoid. The truth is right there in the middle. The dark side is real. Satan is real. But we don't need to be obsessed by it. We need to know your enemy, as MacArthur would say, but we don't need to be obsessed by it. We need to be bold when it comes to these kind of topics and when it comes to Satan and demons, but we don't need to be careless either. Think about this. When is the best time to prepare your lawn? By that I mean you don't want any weeds to grow up. You want a pristine, a manicured, green, healthy, lush lawn. When's the best time to prepare for that? Well, it's really before the grass starts growing, right, in the winter, and you put on what's called that pre-emergent fertilizer and weed killer. Or maybe shortly after, maybe in the very early spring when the weeds are just starting to come up, you would apply that weed killer. See, that was Satan's strategy. That was Satan's strategy 2,000 plus years ago to stop Christianity. If you remember when Jesus was born and there was the decree to go out that all the babies under 2 would be murdered there in the Bethlehem area, Satan's way of trying to stop Christianity before it ever got started, pre-emergent. And then even 33 or so years later at the cross, at the crucifixion, I'm thinking Satan probably thought he had won that battle, but actually that was part of the plan all along. So he didn't do that. He didn't win in the pre-emergent game. So here in the early stages of Christianity is where we are. That brings us to our lesson in Revelation. You see, Revelation was written in about the year 90, 95, somewhere in there by the Apostle John. He's exiled on the Isle of Patmos, and Christianity is suffering persecution by quite a bit. See, there was the Roman Emperor Domitian, and he considered himself to be a god. And, you bow to me and call me a deity, or you're going to be persecuted and probably die. And that's what happened in Christianity. And so Jesus allows John to get a little glimpse of the future. And so as John wrote these things down, it was an encouragement to those first century Christians that the persecution that they were under at that time, it was intense and it was real, but it was just a little drop in the ocean compared to what was going to happen in eternity. Compared to, if they could persevere just a little bit during this time of persecution, Satan and his armies were going to be defeated at the end of time. And then we carry that forward a couple of thousand years, and it's an encouragement to us as well. Now, I know in 21st century America, right now, we are not under near the persecution that first century church was. But when we are facing those times as individually or as a church or as a whole church, as the Christian body, whenever we face those times of doubt, of persecution, of ridicule, whatever, we can turn to Revelation and see the end of the story. I know some of you guys are probably the kind of person that you might pick up a novel, a whodunit, and you might turn to the very back and read the last few pages just to see how it ends before you go back and read it. I'm not that kind of person. I like the suspense and surprise. But here we can do that. We can see the end of the story, and that's good. That's reassuring for us as believers, that we know, regardless of what we're going through, that it's going to be okay in the end. In fact, there will be no evil. There will be no pain or tears or suffering or all that at the end of time. And then we'll have eternity to rejoice and live in that. So here we are. We're in Revelation chapter 12, and we're right in the middle of some pretty wild imagery. And right in the middle of that is our passage here in verses 5 through 12. And it's pretty straightforward. There's a little bit of imagery, but not some of the wild stuff that we read before and after. It talks about a war that's in heaven. And who's fighting this war? Well, it's Michael and his angels. And it's against the dragon and his angels. And we get on down to verse 9 and we see who that dragon is defined as. Of course, we know that already. But we see that, just in case there's any doubt, we see that dragon is defined as the ancient serpent. Now, if you think about a serpent from ancient times, who do we think of? We go all the way back to the Garden of Eden in Genesis, and we know that was Satan himself. So we got Satan here. In fact, in that verse, in verse 9, it talks about Satan, or the devil, the deceiver. Verse 10, we get down, another descriptive word used is accuser, that he constantly is accusing before God about the believers on earth. He's been doing this since the beginning of time. Satan's been deceiving. You go to Eve and he says, hey, you're not going to die. Go ahead and partake of the fruit. He's been accusing since the beginning of time. Satan goes before God and tells God that, Job's going to give up. He's got it too easy. He's accusing him of having a very shallow faith. He continues to do this today with us. He deceives us. And what are some of those ways that Satan deceives us? That may be a good question to ask your class and see what kind of response they have. Some answers might include just doubting the existence of God, if God really cares, just doubting the Bible and its authenticity. He deceives us by what we once considered evil, we now accept and then eventually cling to or adhere to. He deceives us by, and this doesn't fall into the evil category, it just falls into the not so good category, and that is, he deceives us by tricking us, allowing us to pursue good and not the best, by ignoring the best and doing good. I know our church, and probably most of churches, are filled with people who are doing a lot of good things. They're not bad things, but they're not the best things. Now, I'm not against community organizations at all, but so many people in churches are tied up in community organizations and doing good that they're not doing their best. They're not concentrating on God and His best. Anyway, that's a little soapbox. Anyway, so he deceives us, but he also accuses us. He tells us in this passage that he's been accusing constantly, relentlessly. And he accuses us to God. In fact, he's probably up there saying, look at Jim. Look at that bonehead down here. He's a louse. He doesn't deserve your grace. He doesn't deserve your love. I can picture that, and actually, if Satan were to say that, that would be true. I do not deserve that. He also accuses us as well, doesn't he? Reminding us of those past failures, that negative self-talk that comes to mind so often. He's an accuser. He's a deceiver. So like I say so many times, there's a lot of good info there in your literature, in your leader's guide. If you get the advanced commentary, there's a lot of more in-depth study for that. There's also the Herschel Hobbs commentary. Some of you guys might subscribe to that as well. Let's think about some possible discussion questions that might come out of this lesson. Think about movies, okay? And there's a lot of movies with the good versus evil, that they're equal forces. And that a lot of times in the movies, most of the time, it's an equal struggle and it's a give and take, and then kind of at the end, the good ekes out and defeats the evil. And we think, well, that might be kind of be how it is here in Revelation with God and Satan. But that's not the case with God and Satan. They are not equal forces. What seems like evil constantly taking over and gaining more and more ground, while that's true, let's remember that God and Satan are not on equal footing. God and creation. God, angels. Satan is an angel. Satan is not another God. And I think a lot of our folks know that. They know that mentally, but they really haven't bought into it, that they think that there's two equal opposing forces. And what seems like the evil that's going to, it's constantly getting worse and worse, and God's finally going to eke out over the, goodness is finally going to eke out over the end and defeat that. That's kind of true, but actually, what does Romans 16:20 say? Is that God will soon crush Satan. It's not a get a little bit of advantage and win. No, it's God is going to crush Satan. That is an absolute defeat. It's not a barely win, it's a crush. And yes, Satan is active right now on planet Earth, but it's nothing like what's going to happen right before his end. You've seen some movies, maybe you've even seen some real life TV type shows where the cornered criminal, he's going to go to his own death with guns blazing. He's taking as many people down as he can. If he's going down, people are going down with him. That's what's happening here at the end. As Satan goes down, he's going to try to take as many people as possible. Here's something else to consider. I don't think Satan is that personally interested in Jim Monroe. Okay? By that I mean he's busy in front of God accusing the believers. I think he's got other lower level ranking, if you want to call them that, angels or demons that are doing his bidding for him. I don't think, when I'm tempted, I say, yeah, Satan tempted me. Well, we know what we mean by that, but I don't think Satan himself is personally that involved in Jim Monroe's life. Okay. Also, here's a thought to think about. And I don't think I've ever thought about this. And somebody mentioned this. They had heard this in a sermon a week or so ago. Have you ever thought that Satan is actually jealous of you? See, Satan, he's been there. He's tasted heaven. He knows what it's like. He knows your future as a believer. But he also knows his too, because he knows the end of the book as well. And just like that cornered criminal, I think his attitude is, if I'm not going to go there, I'm taking as many as I can with me. So that's just a few things to think about as you approach this lesson this week. All right, don't forget to pray for your class this week. Try to contact them, tell them what's coming up this quarter. Think about a fellowship. It's starting to get fall. There's football season. It's going to get a little cooler. All kinds of fun things that your class can do. For this week, that's all I have. Hope you have a great, great Sunday school lesson.